Welcome, Baruchim Habaim. Welcome to Awakening TORAH Mussar Mindfulness. I'm Rabbi Chasya Uriel Steinbauer, the founder and director of the Institute for Holiness, Kehilat Mussar Mindfulness, located here in the Galil and Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel. We offer classes and retreats, but mostly Mussar mindfulness groups throughout the whole world that meet on Zoom to be on this path towards holiness together, to really engage in this daily spiritual discipline of Mussar mindfulness. You can learn more about us at kehilatmussar.com, KEHILATMUSSAR.com. You are joining us now live streaming on all the social media platforms or on our Zoom channel. You can also find us at our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Do go to the website, subscribe to our newsletter there. And if you're already someone engaged in Mussar practice or have learned in the past, do reach out and join one of our vadim, one of our groups, to engage in a whole new, meaningful way, one that is intimate with leadership from a master teacher, where you really take refuge in a community. Today is July 8th here in Israel. It's in the middle of the night, around 12:30. The Hebrew date on the calendar is the 2nd of Tammuz, Chodesh Tov, celebrating the new moon of the Hebrew month of Tammuz in Tafshin Pei Dalet, the year of 5784. We are jumping in to the Torah portion of BEHAALOTECHA. Okay, one of the longer words in Torah portion, obviously. And this Torah portion, just to pull up the dates and times for you, it starts in chapter 8 in the book of Numbers and Bamidbar. The first verse is verse 1. And it goes all the way through. It's actually quite long. And it goes all the way through the end of chapter 12. Okay, 12, and the last verse in chapter 12 is verse 16. So this took place on June 22nd, 2024. The Hebrew date was Tet Zayin, the 16th of Sivan, Tafshin Pei Dalet. So before we jump in, which is our practice in awakening TORAH Mussar Mindfulness, where we look at the Torah portion from the lens of Mussar, from the Jewish tradition, from mindfulness, from Theravada Buddhism, where we really are gaining the most from our ancestors and from God of how we can use the teachings in the weekly Torah portion in our lives in general and on this path of Mussar mindfulness, but in particular this year, so that we can survive, so that we can recover or cope, and maybe even be on a path of healing from the genocide of October 7th in Israel, the ongoing kidnapping and remaining of the captives, and the ongoing wars from 9 different fronts from the proxies of Iran. So before we begin, we always begin our practice, like any spiritual discipline, of having intentions, what we call in Hebrew kavanot. And normally I would share the screen right now for those of you watching by video to see our 3 standard kavanots. But it just happens to be that a colleague of mine used the computer the other day and closed this document, and we have yet to recover it or find it. So I'm just going to tell you what our kavanot are. For those of you listening by audio, you already know the routine if you've listened to any of these podcasts from previous weeks. So what are our intentions? We see this time during awakening, this next 45 minutes to an hour, as radical self-care. And it's not just for the care of the individual. It's care so that individual can go ahead and be of service to others, to be of benefit to others through that radical self-care. And so our intention is that through this self-care today, that we bring God's good to others through this time, through this practice, through this taking refuge in the practice as we engage in mindfulness meditation towards the end. We also do this because we want to strengthen our relationship with the other. So here's us, the other, and then the Almighty. We want to strengthen our relationship with others so that we can be really of service and of benefit to them, bring God's good to them when they need us, right? When they, on their terms, need us. And the same thing with our relationship with the divine. However we define the divine, however we define that relationship, we're doing this to strengthen it, right? To really be that conduit, that vessel on behalf of the Almighty to make this world one day at a time a better place. So those are our intentions, our kavanot. May we merit fulfilling them in honor of our ancestors, in honor of God, in honor of each other as we practice right now. So I always begin with a summary of the Torah portion. And then I'm going to jump into a specific place, kind of what we need to focus on and go from there. Okay? So give me 1 second. All right. Aharon, who is the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. He is the brother to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher. Aharon is commanded to light the menorah inside the Mishkan, inside the portable sanctuary that our ancestors have built and are beginning to travel with. The Leviim, which are members of the tribe of Levi, they prepare for their work in the Mishkan, which essentially is breaking down the Mishkan and rebuilding it, carrying the vessels, that type of holy work. Some people couldn't bring a Korban Pesach during the festival of Pesach because they were tamei at the time. They were impure because they had come into contact with a dead body, which thousands and thousands of years ago was really part of a purity system of our ancestors, that if you come across a dead body, you move from a state of purity to impurity and have to go through the required rituals to move out of that state. God goes ahead, after being consulted with our teacher Moshe, that to give them a second chance, that they can go ahead and bring the Korban Pesach, the sacrifice to God for Passover, a month later. And we call that festival, still to this day, Pesach Sheni, right? The second Passover. Then later on in the portion, we are told that about the time the Mishkan was built. A cloud from Hashem, from God, would cover it during the day, and a fire would cover it, provide light for it at night. And when that cloud or fire would move, Bnei Israel would follow. Our children, the children of Israel, the Hebrews, our ancestors. God tells Moshe to make 2 silver trumpets. Their sound would gather Bnei Israel for special occasions. Be one sound for apparently the Eidah, like the leadership, to arise and come, and another sound for everyone. Almost a year at Har Sinai, at the Mount Sinai, the children of Israel begin traveling through the wilderness, sometimes called desert. So they're finally marching. They've created their order of how the different tribes are going to be set up and surrounding, protecting the Mishkan, and they're finally marching. So Bnei Israel, the children, begin to complain. They complain about eating the manna that was this miraculous food from the Almighty. And they're tired of it. They've grown tired of eating man, and they complain and they demand meat. Now, some people claim this is fish. Some people claim this is quail, bird. We don't exactly know. But God tells Moshe that the people will get so much that it'll actually be coming out of their noses. So already you can sense with this kind of reactivity and response that God did not take to their complaining well. So God sends many quail, a kind of bird, and that's what they eat for a whole month. Finally, Miriam, the elder sister of Moshe, and Aharon, the elder brother, speak badly, commit what's called lashon hara, evil speech, gossip about Moshe and his wife. And Miriam is struck with sara'at. And you might recall from back in Vayikra and Leviticus, what is sara'at? It is a skin disease. Some people say it's leprosy, but we don't really believe that today. And after Aharon beseeches Moshe, please pray on her behalf, save her, Moshe goes ahead and prays for God to heal her. So that is a quick summary of what we can expect to find here in BEHAALOTECHA. And I'm going to move into what I want us to focus on, because obviously in any of these Torah portions, there's so much material that we can't cover it all. But I started to notice a theme this year that I don't know why I didn't notice this in previous years. This is the gift of Torah, to be honest with you, that you can sit and learn in Havruta with teachers and groups and from all our parshanim, all our commentators, and every year I see something new and different. I think it's the gift. It's a gift in many ancient traditions where people learn habitually a certain text, a certain time each year. So what I'm beginning to see is this huge theme of leadership and who gets to share power in the community, who has access to it, why do they have access to it, who are they? Different contesting groups start to emerge. And finally, what we'll come across, not in this Torah portion, but in Shalach and in Korach, you're going to actually witness what I will call a coup, attempted coup. And I hadn't seen this directly until the genocide of October 7th. And in particular, the different vying groups within Israel for power, for reactivity to the leadership, reactivity to the state of the war, really realizing about how much when people complain and they don't serve a higher goal and purpose, they will be at each other's throats and will attempt to take power even through violent means. We see violence in the streets and some of these protests, fire, attacking police officers, all these things that I will surely say I'm completely against and don't support. I'm someone that even when I profoundly disagree with another Jew in our ancestral land, I still feel that we must sit and communicate and work through this, not try to silence each other, not try to demonize, so that we actually don't even listen to one another. So let's look at this change in leadership that comes up in this Torah portion. And something happens simultaneously. And I think it's not a coincidence. I think they feed off of each other. So the first is, if you go to chapter 9, verses 15 through 23, when it talks about the fire cloud, right? That God leads Israel, the people of Israel, in its wilderness march, not by God's voiced command anymore, but instead by God's appointed signs. And in this case, a cloud encased fire. During the day, only the cloud is visible, and the fire presumably dimmed by the sunlight. We don't know. And at night renders the cloud invisible. We assume the cloud is still there, but we don't know. And then the fire can clearly be seen. The fire is also called kavod. So what I want us to really pay attention here is that as God starts to have his people travel throughout the wilderness, and so much tension and contest will unfold, that God, either in God's wisdom, meaning God knew this all along and God was planning to behave this way no matter what happened, God is beginning to slowly withdraw to make, and this is my hypothesis, not just mine, this has been posited throughout thousands of years, for human beings to really take ownership of the Torah, the law, and the instruction given to them, and to be able to live with that free will and with it the mistakes that humans make. They need to be able to work out their differences and tensions and not have a Godhead, in this case, the divine, controlling everything. And so you begin to see God's withdraw, not 100%, but it shifts and changes. And here, and it's not a punishment. It's not a punishment to the people. I know it might feel like a punishment, especially to more of an immature mind, maybe children's mind. Also, adults can have that too. We all can be, I don't want to call it guilty of it, but like I think of my 11-year-old. He'll always say to me, why isn't God with us the way God was at Har Sinai? Why don't we hear God's voice? Why don't we see God? Why don't we? And I try to explain that to be honest with you, we can't really even breathe fully when God's fully present with us. There's so much fear. There's just such a high level of purity has to be maintained that it's almost impossible for the average human. There are many reasons, but what we see here is God changes God's leadership, God's unfolding with the people of what God wants, from one that was through voice commands to appointed signs. And if you're like most human beings, that you're going to feel that. You're going to feel a bit of loss. At least there'll be some form of narrative or storytelling of why I don't hear God's voice anymore. I only see this cloud and fire. And with that withdrawal, you have these huge shifts slowly happening over time in leadership. So let's go through that. First, you have Moshe, Moses Rabbeinu, right? Moses, our teacher. You have Aharon, who will turn into Kohen Gadol, and you have Miriam, a prophetess, prophet, the sister. That is who, at the beginning, really led the people from the institution of slavery into the wilderness. Moses taking up the most amount of space, commanded by God, given for that reason. Then we see this shift where Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, comes and visits and sees how he's leading everything, right? And he's like, you're going to get totally, use modern language today, you're going to have burnt out. You're going to burn out. You're doing too much. You're listening to every case that is brought before you. You are ruling everything, doing everything. You're doing it from, it even says in the Torah that Moshe did this from morning sunshine to late at night. Okay. So Yitro in his wisdom says you need to appoint judges for 10,000, 1,000, 110, and let these wise men at the time, it was only men, let these wise men determine these cases, and you'll just do the big major ones, right? So that's the first shift, okay? Then God replaces the firstborn of the tribes, the 12 tribes that God was going to take for service, and replaces it with the Levites. And you start to see this leadership model where the Levites and the Kohanim, the priest, are going to be the ones that are sanctified and separated differently, that will provide a certain service and therefore have to maintain a certain level of purity. The rest of the population does not. Okay, but at the same time, you should already notice, wait a minute, what happened to the leadership of the 12 tribes? This was a tribal people. Our ancestors were a tribal people. They belonged to 12 different tribes coming from the 12 sons of Yaakov. They very much held to that system where ideally the eldest son took over the leadership. Often we see in the Torah, it ends up being the youngest son who usurps or takes over or is considered the better leader. Okay, so all of a sudden you have this shift where this really affects the firstborn of the Shivatim, of the tribes. Okay, so let's just hold on to that, because this is going to come back. It's going to come back to bite everyone. Okay, and then you have all of a sudden you have where Moshe is told at some point, that he has to share. He shares this leadership with like 70 elders. And this takes place back in Shemot, in Exodus, chapter 4, verse 29, or chapter 12, 21. They're elders, essentially, that accompanying Moshe, actually, up the mountain at Har Sinai. They do this in chapter 24, verse 9. And that's already, okay, so now you have the elders. You always have the elders. So there's the elders, there's the firstborn of the tribes. You now have the Levites and the Kohanim. Okay, so just keep all these leadership, different parties, okay? So what happens to that 70 that accompanied Moshe at Sinai, which is essentially an advisory council to Moses? So our Parshanim, our rabbis, are very sensitive to this, because God's solution to, in this Torah portion, when Moshe starts complaining, this is all too much for me. I'm like a nurse. I'm a woman who's nursing all these children and carrying them. I can't handle this myself. God's solution to Moshe is to give you 70 leaders. So all of a sudden our rabbis are like, what? He already had 70 leaders in advisory council. Guess what? You remember just earlier in this Torah portion where the people started complaining for food. In this case, it was at the location of, let's see here, which one was this? Tave'era. It's in Pasuk 3. Tavera, okay? And in English, they call it Tabera. And the people cried out to Moshe, right? This is when they want meat. So the rabbis assume that these original 70 elders who went up to the Har Sinai with Moshe, that they were part of the unseemly conduct, meaning the complaining, and they were destroyed by the divine fire. All right, let's keep this in mind. Leaders, elderly leaders, are destroyed by divine fire for complaining. Okay. What already start to imagine what is this going to do to the erosion of the community and the leadership? Okay. Next. So basically Moshe gets appointed 70 new leaders, even though it's not worded this way. And then you hear this in this Torah portion where it talks about how the Eidah, essentially Eidah means congregation, but in this case it means the grown males are to come and serve in some way. And even at the beginning of Bamidbar, we had it listed of the Nisi'im, the chieftains, right? The tribal leaders of each of the 12 tribes are listed, and they are the ones that actually even bring the gifts and the offerings to the finalized Mishkans, okay? So we're having these contending parties, okay, going on, essentially. So what really happens in this Torah portion then, what goes on that I need to bring to your attention. So just give me 1 second here. So I already told you about the meat. Is essentially you have the chieftains who complain about power. Let's see here if we have this. No, this comes in Shalach Lacha. Okay, hold on. This will come in the next Torah portion and Shalach, often known as Shalach Lacha. You suddenly have like almost an uprising of the chieftains who will complain. This comes in chapter 13. Then in this one, you have Miriam and Aharon who are complaining about their brother. That tends to be about a challenge of who really has prophetic power and knowledge in the community and is able to use it by authority of themselves and God. And especially this arises when God decides to lay on these new 70 elders this ability for prophecy. And in particular, 2 of them who kind of go about the camp in this kind of ecstatic prophetic behavior, right? So Moshe and Aharon then come and complain, and not even complain. They speak poorly about their brother, but really, when someone complains, we actually learn this teaching from Rav Zelik Pliskin, a beautiful teaching. And I actually think he teaches it in the name of somebody else. Let me see if I can find it, who he brings here. I guess he just brings it himself. He brings a Rashi. Where Rashi essentially says, if Rashi is our beloved Parshan, commentator from France, the Middle Ages, really brilliant, wonderful contributor, beloved rabbi who has commentary on all the Torah, the Tanakh, and the Babylonian Talmud, just great contributor to Rabbinic Judaism. And he sees that when someone wants to keep an emotional distance from someone, right, they complain about the person. So they use complaining to create an emotional distance. And so we see this with Miriam and Aharon, so much so that even Moshe, begins to complain after all of this, coming later on in chapter 20. So the other key thing I want to point out here, because this is all going to come to head next Torah portion and also Korach, but in Shalach Lacha. I want you to keep in mind these kind of vying groups that are all of a sudden like really coming to a head and emerging, where you have the ancient tribal system, the ancient eldest child system, eldest son, where you have the elderly, where you have the prophets, And then you have the judges, and then you're going to have the head of the tribes, the Nisi'im, and this is all going to come to a head of who's leading and who's vying for power and who thinks they are deserving of a position at the table. So what does this mean to us today? Okay, the last thing I want you to keep in mind is that we're going to see also this, it's like almost a parallel universe is beginning to happen, where you have the Levites and the Kohanim doing their business in the Mishkan, maintaining purity. They're over here, and here's everyone else. And everyone else is not on the same page. And we go about marching, and if we are forced to march too long, complaints begin to happen. Sometimes when we are forced to camp and stay, then there begins to be conflict. And this is all important to watch. There's this concept that no matter where the people go, God is with them. God is the island, in the sense that it doesn't matter where they go. And we have to keep that in mind as we look at even our own situation, as we move to all different locations in Israel, fighting these different fronts and wars, whether it be Gaza or the West Bank, or up in the north with Hezbollah, and then the Houthis down in the south. God is with us, right? And we have to keep that in mind and keep our vision on the shared goal, the shared ancestral land. There's a shared heart here and a shared purpose. And even though at times, just like when God's presence with our ancestors shifted from voice command to signs, and it was clear to all of us watching, for instance, when Iran was sending over the missiles to us, and we ended up intercepting 99.9 of them, that was a nace. That was a moment of Hashem, of God intervening and causing a miracle. We have to have our eyes open. We have to practice hakarat hatov, this awakening to the good and giving thanks. You have to recognize what is before you. If you get caught up in a cycle of only practicing ayin hara, the evil eye, right? What we call looking at the glass half empty, only complaining, right? It's called the complaining mind, finding what's wrong, ma chaser. You are going to get caught up in a cycle of this story, this movie playing in your head, and it feeds off of each other like a fire, like a wildfire. Because if you complain, then everyone else starts to complain. And that just feeds absolutely what we don't need right now. I don't think we ever need it, but especially right now. So before I finish with this, I want to share a very important teaching that Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld taught some time ago. He was a guest speaker at an opening of a yeshiva in Yerushalayim in Jerusalem. And he brings from the pasuk in our Torah portion in chapter 10, Perak Yud, and pasuk Lamed Hey 35, where we have the pasuk Vayhi ben soa ha'aron, vayomer Moshe, kuma Hashem, vayifutzu oivecha, vayinusu mesonecha, mepanecha. It's when the ark that held the 10 utterances, and including the broken ones, when that traveled, Moshe would stand and say, "Arise, get up, Hashem, the Almighty, and disperse your enemies." and those who hate you will flee from you. We cite this verse every time we open the ark that holds the Torah, the Torah in the synagogue, in the Beit Knesset. And Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld says that there's a special reason why we actually say this every time. And he says, essentially, whenever someone wants to start something worthwhile, a Torah institution, a war in order to save the hostages and save our people and save our values and our Western civilization, our Torah values, our way of being and life. Whenever we want to start something worthwhile, there are always people who want to try to stop us. He goes on to teach, therefore, when we take out the Torah, we ask that the Almighty should disperse the enemies of Torah and prevent them from causing trouble. This is quoted in Mara De'ara Yisrael on page 155. So when we realize in advance of the difficulties that we are facing and possibly more, right? We must always know and keep in mind that difficulties are likely to arise. He's teaching this to us when we try to spread Torah. And then we won't be taken by surprise. That is to say, we as the Jews in the land of Israel, in a Jewish nation, in a Jewish country, are always spreading Torah. That is our mission. That is who we are. That's what we do. And in particular, when we fight this war, whether it be in Gaza, in the West Bank, in the North, and in the South, we are spreading Torah. We must assume that there are going to be difficulties, right? That there are enemies that will try to stop us from living Torah, from teaching Torah, spreading Torah, and living by our Torah values. So rather, we will make plans to overcome these difficulties. And we must pray to Hashem, the Almighty, for assistance. And we will never allow the opposition to prevent us from spreading Torah. This is very important, because now that we've had November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, it's been 9 months in the Gregorian calendar since the genocide of October 7th. We now have the gift, blessing of some hindsight, right? To be able to look back at this and realize, oh, this is much larger than us. This is much larger than it being about Gaza and Israel, the Palestinians and the Jews. This is about a radical Islamist people culture that is attempting to wipe out Western civilization and its values. It's happening in Europe, happening in Canada, happening in the United States, happening in Australia, attempting to happen here in Haaretz in Israel. This is much larger. This is about an axis of evil. North Korea, Russia, Turkey, China, Iran, really facing that this is a larger enterprise, a regional one that most likely will end up being, God forbid, a world war. And we must rise up. This is part for us to expect, that just like when we arise to open the Torah, the Ark, every Shabbat, every time we pull the Torah out, and we say, arise, Hashem, arise, God, right? Stand up in front of your enemies and cause them to flee, to go away, that we are uniting and on this path together. May it be so. Bezrat Hashem. We're going to move into our mindfulness meditation practice together to internalize this week's teaching. I invite you to come to the edge of your seat. If you're seated like I am, you're welcome to walk back and forth. If you want to do walking meditation, you can stand in a strong mountain pose if you want to hold that position. And then you can also lie down, of course, especially if you have any back pain or any chronic pain that it's just too much to sit right now. Please assume the posture that is best for you to be able to be present for the practice. I invite you to close your eyes if you feel safe and comfortable. This basically cuts out any visual stimulation. And you want to really have an upright, dignified posture where you really feel that you are created in the image and likeness of the divine, which you are. I invite you to put your hand on your chest, even give yourself a rub, letting your hands rest wherever it's comfortable. When we begin with a deep inhalation, inviting ease, and exhale. Inhalation and exhale. And this last one, really inviting your full presence here, like you would invite a best friend. Your head, your heart, your soul, your body, really embodied, feeling heavy in your seat bones if you are seated. Fully here. Inhalation and exhale. I always smile when I do those exhalations. I feel my shoulders really soften and lower. I feel joy at the gift of being here to be able to meditate with all of you. So I hope that you feel that too, can appreciate it, be present for it, recognize the good before you. Now just let your breath fall to its own natural rhythm. No need to control your breath. Mindfulness meditation is not a meditation in controlling the breath. It is a meditation in just being fully present, minute by minute, second by second, with whatever arises. And so it's about paying attention. What are my thoughts right now? Am I really here in the present moment with my anchor, with listening to my voice, with my breath? Or am I off? Am I off planning for the future or reminiscing about something that happened in the past? Same thing with our sensations in the body. Anything very strong, pleasant or unpleasant that is pulling your attention away, simply just notice it. Come back to your anchor, simply begin again. There's no need for judgment. I mean, you don't have to beat yourself up if your mind is wandering. That's the practice. It does it. It'll do it 1,000 times a day if you pay attention. Just simply start again. And the same thing, always approach yourself with some compassion, with chesed, loving kindness, what we call metta in the Dharma. Really appreciating, looking at yourself with curiosity, with joy, learning to be a witness to your experience right here and right now. What a gift and what joy to be here practicing together, to be embodied, to know that you have a body and to really feel it. For some of you, there might be strong emotions, either pleasant or unpleasant. And sometimes it's helpful to softly name what's going on with you, or using the feeling tones to just say, oh, that's pleasant, that's unpleasant, or this is neutral. I don't feel either way about it. So allowing yourself to really come to stillness and ease. And for those of you new to meditation, from time to time, you'll hear silence. I won't speak the whole time. And that really is an opportunity for you to turn even more inward, to investigate what is the felt experience. Now, for some of us, we can have any number of the hindrances, the classic hindrances in the Dharma arise in our practice. For example, we might have really strong tiredness, sense of laziness, what is often known as sloth or torpor, where we really start to kind of doze off and things are difficult or challenging. It's difficult for us to remain awake and alert in our practice. And sometimes we feel really strong aversion, where we really are trying to push away our experience or what we might be practicing or feeling. Similarly, the opposite side of that same coin is over-identifying with our experience, where we say, whatever's happening in this meditation is me, as if there's a permanent self that is unchanging. Realizing that this is all impermanent, that these are states that arise and pass. And sometimes we might even have arise the hindrance of ill will, hatred, strong dislike, a lot of reactivity. Good thing to do is really just rub your chest and practice here self-compassion. Say, ouch, this hurts that this is arising. Either ill will towards yourself or towards others, towards God, knowing that this is a state that shall pass also. And one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult, hindrance is doubt, safek. Doubt that we can do the practice. Doubt that we can get through this already in the 9th month since the genocide. Doubt that we are worth it, or that this is a project worthy of trying to fight for and die for. When doubt arises, you won't need any enemies because it will be strong enough. Doubt has the ability to cause us to move into one of the classic trauma responses, where we might freeze like a deer in headlights, not being able to move or function or make decisions. For some of us, it'll be fleeing. We will try to run away from responsibility, run away from caring for ourselves and others. For some of us, that trauma response will be fawning, where we really try to please those who are causing us harm and suffering, or our enemies. And for some of us, that trauma response will be fighting, but we're constantly engaging in battles all the time, whether it's on social media, with our friends, our family, our neighbors, at marches, all the time. It is a trauma response. It's a response to great doubt. It's a trauma response to feeling powerless. It's not using wise discernment to pick your battles, to save and preserve your energy for the real fight, the real war. So for some of us, as we investigate this, we investigate the felt sense of this. Where in the body do we feel this? Are we having any of these hindrances? Are we having any trauma response? How can we treat ourselves with such great loving kindness, compassion, to be able to be present for all of this? Notice the fatigue and exhaustion. Notice anything arising. Really practicing that radical self-care, holding yourself, asking yourself, what does this part of me need? How can I be present for myself? Coming with love, resilience. We move into a few minutes of silence before I ring the bells to come out of the meditation. You had your eyes closed during this meditation. Gently and slowly open them back up. If it is your practice to bow, giving a great bow to Hashem, to God, for this moment, for this practice together. Giving yourself a bow to our ancestors for bringing us this teachings, really showing us the paths. Giving a bow to your Vad, your Sangha, your Kehilat, your community, for taking refuge in this path and practice together. Giving a bow to our teachers here at the Institute for Holiness, leading us to this path and this moment. Really grateful for the teachings and the practice. allowing us to come to this moment together. Today's awakening is sponsored with great joy to celebrate the birthday of Savta Tessa Chernes, beautiful soul that really lives her whole life as chesed, as loving kindness and Torah, always giving and serving. Excellent role model to the Jewish people and to the whole world. So grateful for that sponsorship today. You can be in touch with me via email or WhatsApp if you would like to sponsor in honor or memory of someone. We would be so grateful for your donations to continue this weekly public offering. So thank you again for today. And I look forward to connecting to our next Torah portion, which is Shalach, sometimes called Shalach Lacha, which we will do soon in a day or two. And then we'll be able to do Korach and be caught up, B'ezrat Hashem. So thank you again, wishing you again Chodesh Tov, a beautiful Hebrew month of Tammuz. And God bless. Take care.